Mark Rogers TV getting you set for week 5 of college football. A huge number of games that are of national and conference importance. We bring in Peter Loshak to give us the betting preview and the angle that he has at this point. Early in the game, of course, it's only Monday. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Let's run them down. Let's start in the Pac-12. We've got Arizona coming off a huge loss in which they were completely outclassed by UCLA, going to Stanford, and the Cardinal improving their stock certainly in recent weeks.
Yeah, there's I believe there's no line on that one out yet, right?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, there's no line on it yet. We'll see. The big question is the condition of Kevin Hogan. What's he going to do? The Stanford in general has a thin defensive line, and at some point that's going to matter. I'm definitely looking for Stanford to be overvalued at some point, because at some point Kevin Hogan's body's going to break down a little bit, and their lack of depth on the defensive line is going to matter. Whether that's this week, not exactly sure. Later on in the week, I might have a strong opinion on that. As of right now, no opinion as yet, but that's what I'm looking at for sure with regard to Stanford.
All right, Peter. Staying in the Pac-12, we've got a game where Arizona State is certainly a team that's devalued itself greatly, and it's staring at a third loss with a trip to the Rose Bowl to take on UCLA. The Bruins turning in their most impressive effort in a 26-point shellacking of Arizona.
Yeah, that's tough. Arizona State is 0-4 against the spread. I'm thinking that they might not quite have it against upper tier teams. This year, the zigzag theory. If people buy into that, and that actually can be very valuable at times during the regular season in the top 5. In the Power 5 conferences, would say that Arizona probably bounces back and covers here. I could see it. Again, it's kind of a wait and see, feel it out. UCLA is obviously incredibly strong, so a blowout win would not be at all a surprise. And I'm guessing that the public's going to be all over UCLA, of course.
Okay, Peter, we've got a slew of really big games in the Big Ten. Minnesota at Northwestern doesn't sound like a whole lot, but of course the Wildcats have broken into the rankings with 2 impressive wins against Stanford and Duke. Minnesota just the 6-point loss to TCU, even though they haven't played well against teams from the MAC. It's still Minnesota Northwestern opens up the Big Ten Western Division race.
Well, my first sense on that one is that it's going to be a relatively close game. So, my first thought would be to take the dog, getting that many points, getting more than a field goal. My sense is that, last year the game was very low scoring, went to 41. And my sense is that we're going to see a total in the mid-40s, probably, at least on the opener. And that probably the under will be a reasonably good play, possibly a very good play. And that it might close, in the low 40s. So I'm thinking that the opener will be in the mid-40s and looking to bet on the under in that one. As far as the spread's concerned, not certain yet.
Hey, Peter, Iowa very underregarded at this point, even though they're 4-0. The Hawkeyes have beaten Iowa State and Pitt. They go to Wisconsin, the Badgers, with the one big game against Bama. Otherwise, they've trounced a lot of Group 5 teams. So we've got Iowa, Wisconsin, and this, again, a huge game toward the division championship.
Yeah, this one opened at 8, and now it's about 6.5, and that has to be significant sharp action, right? That's not the public jumping in all over Iowa as a road underdog. And, these Iowa and Wisconsin usually play pretty close games, right? They're usually, margins in the single digits. And this is actually a better Iowa team than they've had in recent past. And I think they're 10-3 against the spread in their last 13 road games. They tend to do well against, spread on the road. They tend to play relatively close games against Wisconsin. And this is a pretty good Iowa team. And I think there was early sharp action on Iowa. So it's 6.5, not exactly sure, but I'm guessing sharps came in on Iowa, and probably that's the right side, even at 6.5. But again, it's early, just Monday.
Peter, one other game in the Big Ten that looks like a blowout, but I think it's a pretty tricky line, is that Indiana's hosting Ohio State. The Hoosiers gave the Buckeyes fits last year, the third to the last game of the season. Ohio State obviously underachieving at this point in regards to point spreads, but they go to Indiana, and the Hoosiers, yes, not going to get ranked until they win this game. If they win this, then they jump into the rankings. But at 4-0, obviously very much under the radar.
Yeah, this is actually a very tricky game. This is reminding me kind of when Alabama had their elite teams, and they wouldn't cover when they were a massive favorite, but then when they would be like a 22 point road favorite against Tennessee, suddenly they would have value. And those would also be the kind of games where like the sharps and the public would both come in on Alabama. And I think we might have a similar situation here. Obviously, the public's going to be all over Ohio State. And the thing is, Ohio State 3 straight ATS losses, but those were all spreads of 30 points or more. And when you get elite teams like Ohio State as a favorite of, less than 3 touchdowns, those can be situations where the public and the sharps sometimes come in on the favorite, and that might be the right side. And that we might see the same thing here. I wouldn't at all be surprised to hear that the sharps came in on Ohio State. The public for sure will be all over Ohio State, though. This might close, over 21.
Peter, the Big 12 finally jumping into the national spotlight with a couple big games, Oklahoma State over Texas close, and that thriller Texas Tech and TCU. We've got a slew of big games. We'll find out if West Virginia is any good. They go to Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, the big deal here is that Oklahoma's off a bye and West Virginia is off a blowout, and that sets up for Oklahoma to have a big game. I'm really not sure, but my sense is that we'll see if any the public will definitely be all over Oklahoma for sure. Will the sharps come in on West Virginia? I doubt it, and if they don't, probably Oklahoma is a side with value, but we'll see where the line moves. That's another one we have to wait and see where the action comes and where the line moves.
Peter, CCU lost a ton on defense in recent weeks due to suspensions and injuries. I didn't make a whole lot out of it. I thought they were going to go to Lubbock and really take care of business. They scraped by about as close a game as you could get. They face a Texas team that's suddenly scoring points and showing a little fight, going to Oklahoma State or hosting Oklahoma State last week and almost pulling out a win.
Well, we saw last week with, TCU had an opener on the total that was 79, and as high as that total is, it turned out to be way too low, and that was, they closed in the mid 80s, and I think we also might see the same thing here. I'm not sure where this total will open. I'm guessing it'll open in the upper 70s because Texas doesn't quite have the offensive reputation as Texas Tech, but I'm guessing we might see a similar situation where the total opens in the upper 70s and the public and possibly the sharps come in on the over, and the over might wind up having good value. I bet Texas on the opener at 17.5. I think, you said it, TCU is decimated enough, I think, to have them be questionable as this big of a favorite over a program like Texas. So I did bet personally Texas on the opening line at 17.5. And if the total opens in the upper 70s, I'll be looking at betting on the over there as well, as I did bet the Texas Tech over.
It's nice to see, Peter, that Baylor plays college football. They finally joined the rest of the schedule, the rest of the ranked teams in playing somebody of significance. So Baylor and Texas Tech, last year the Red Raiders gave Baylor everything they could handle in a 2-point game when Texas Tech was very lightly regarded. Now they come off 2 performances against Arkansas and TCU that really put the Red Raiders on the map. They go to Baylor, and Baylor's finally, again, going to have to play somebody decent.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting scheduling spot. We all know that, Baylor is a team that actually has gotten so good that they've actually had issues with complacency. We've read reports about that earlier in the year. So they're kind of aware of that. They're not, they're kind of conscious about not letting down in games like this. And the scheduling spot is actually pretty favorable for Baylor. As you said, Texas Tech played 2 tough games and Baylor had a bye and then an easy blowout win. So combining all that, I'm actually thinking, for sure the public's going to be on Baylor, but again, that might be the side with value. This might be another situation where we might see a sharp action and the public on the same side. I strongly suspect that this line will close, if not over 17, at maybe 16.5. I'd personally be leaning Baylor here because of the scheduling spot.
Hey, Peter, one more in the Big 12, Oklahoma State hosting Kansas State, and this might be a big stereotype type outlook on my part, but it would appear as though Kansas State would be very underregarded. I would guess that they have favorable numbers traditionally against the line because they're so lightly regarded and typically turn in a season that's far more in regards to what the expectations were earlier in the season. We know what Bill Snyder's accomplished there at Kansas State. Now they go to Oklahoma State, a team that I expected to really handle Texas, and that didn't play out. They needed some close calls, some questionable referees' judgment late in the game to pull that game out.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas State is a perennially, kind of week in and week out, just undervalued team. And as much as they cover, as well as they play, as competitive as they are, the market just doesn't quite seem to catch up with them. And they're kind of like Stanford was a few years ago when the sharps would bet them like every other week, and they were just week in and week out undervalued. And I think we see the same thing here. Yeah, they're off a bye. The line is low enough that I'm guessing that the public's going to be all over Oklahoma State in this one. I mean, even though last year Kansas State blasted Oklahoma State, I'm guessing the public's going to be all over Oklahoma State, and I'm also guessing that there will be sharp action on Kansas State, and we might see one of the classic public sharp splits on this one. I completely agree with you.
All right, Peter, we're really putting you to work here, but there was just so many good games.
No, we're in the thick of it. We're in the thick of it.
Going here. What's that, Peter?
We're in the thick of it. This is it. This is college football, baby.
This is beautiful. When I started to look through these games, I was like, man, I need his take on all these. So we really step it up here to some really big games when we talk Georgia, now considered a national championship contender, even though they haven't played anyone. So they really step up in class with Alabama coming to town. And I believe the number is 72 in terms of consecutive games that Alabama was favored. That has to be some kind of record. They go to Athens as a 1-point dog right now.
Is it 1 point? Okay, because
that's the last I heard.
Last I saw was actually it moved in favor of Georgia 2.5. I actually went back and checked. The last time they were a regular season underdog was September of 2008, and this is obviously going to be a game that people are going to talk about, discuss ad nauseum. I'm sure I'll do at least 2 video previews on it. It's going to be there very well could be sharp action on this one. I'll be very interested to see what it is. I'm going to talk to my lines manager guy that I do a show with every Thursday on college football. This is definitely a game I'm going to ask him about. It's entirely possible, as we saw in the NFL with the Jets and Philly last week, that there will be sharp action on both sides. It's entirely possible. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case at all. We'll see. As I'm feeling it out like everyone else is right now. It's a fascinating situation. Obviously, my first thought is Alabama as an underdog would be the way to go, but we will see. We'll learn a lot more about this as the week unfolds. Yeah,
if that line would somehow creep to 3, boy, I would definitely be jumping on that. Florida's a lightly regarded team for a name brand program, but of course, not much expected with a coaching change and the state of the program, but 2 really big wins for them at this point in their development against Kentucky and Tennessee, the miracle they pulled off. They stay in the swamp. We'll see if the Gators are able to come up with back-to-back efforts. That's usually challenging for a team at their pace of development. But Ole Miss comes in after a snoozer against Vandy. I guess we can write that one off as that's what happens to big teams when they get caught in a trap game, but they were able to survive, and now they go to Florida.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I bet about 10 or 12 of the opening lines last night, and this was one of them. I did take Florida at +7. I definitely, anticipated the fallout from the Mississippi-Alabama game in both Mississippi and Alabama. I actually bet the under in both Mississippi and Alabama's games last week, and I also bet against them on the spread. And of course, all 4 of those bets won. And in this one, I think I have a good read on this one as well. And I know the public's going to be on Mississippi. How big will it be? I don't know. It might be just 2-1 in favor of Mississippi. It could be 5-1 or 6-1. Public will definitely be on Mississippi here, and I strongly suspect that at 7 we'll get reports that sharp action came in on Florida, and I personally bet Florida at +7, and it's down to 6.5 now. We'll see where it closes.
Good stuff. All right. I'm going to make the same comment about Mississippi State that I made with Kansas State. I'm just guessing, since the Bulldogs have been decent and at times really good under Dan Mullen, that they've been lightly regarded in the SEC. They don't have the name, they don't have the reputation, but have competed in that Western Division. They go to Texas A&M, a hot team in regards to cachet, but they really struggled against Arkansas and needed a late drive to get that to overtime and then pull it out.
Yeah, this one actually, this is another one that I bet, not hugely. I did actually take Texas A&M -7. Mississippi State, they beat Auburn, but Auburn actually outgained them. And I think we have a good read on Auburn right now that if you get outgained by Auburn, that's not a good sign. And Mississippi State, basically won that game because of the turnovers, right? Auburn had 3 turnovers. And I think that they've overachieved a little bit this year. They basically have Prescott and not much else. And Texas A&M. The Arizona State win was, I think, very, very telling as far as how they, match up against teams like, on this level, sort of like mid-range or lower, Pac-12, SEC type teams. The public's going to be on Texas A&M here. I'm not sure if the sharps will come in on Mississippi State. I'd be surprised to hear that. I personally bet Texas A&M at 7, although I wouldn't touch it at 7.5.
Okay, Peter, we finally make it to the finish line and a huge primetime game at Clemson with the Tigers having not played anyone, excluding maybe the Louisville game on the road in which they squeaked by 3 points, hosting Notre Dame, decimated by injuries, but they continue to win, continue to impress, and they have a very good defense that is a little bit better than maybe most of us expected.
Yeah, this one actually I'm a little bit confused by, and there was some pretty significant movement. It's already picked them, I believe, and Clemson was like -2 or so on the opener. That Notre Dame action, though, I'm guessing was not sharp. I'm guessing that was public action. I mean, the Clemson win over Louisville was not terribly inspiring, but as you said, the injuries to Notre Dame at some point will catch up with them. I'm pretty confident that the public will be on Notre Dame here. Will it be sharp action? I'm not exactly sure, and I have no opinion as yet. If you ask me right now, I would lean Clemson, but they haven't looked terribly inspiring, and I think this is another game where we're going to wait and see, and the picture will become clearer as the week goes on.
Peter Loshak from Sportsbook Review joining us to run down a slew of amazing games for Week 5. We should know a whole lot more about these teams as they dive into conference play, and we see some of the traditional powers really going at it this week. Peter, thanks so much for the time, and definitely check out Peter on Sportsbook Review, their website on YouTube, and their own personal website in regards to keeping us up to date on the latest lines and angles and Peter's perspective on the games as the line changes and moves throughout the week. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Peter.
Thanks so much. Anytime.